Brief remarks on all those three questions. On the media, and I write for the Observer and the Guardian, and the Financial Times occasionally, and I do quite a lot of television and stuff. And I'm on the Scott Trust that owns the Guardian and the nine people who are entrusted with the Guardian and the Observer. What can I say? And I think there is a I think that market. There is obviously problems. I mean the foregrounding of the very shallow, the kind of avalanche journalism, the screaming from the rooftops. Actually, sometimes the taking of what someone has said and twisting it so that it's really not a reflection of what they said. To catch the headline. I mean, we all know the phenomena, but actually we are all kind of streetwise, and I think the British public does actually know when that's taking place. I resile from it, and I do my small bit to try and be a countervailing force. But I mean, I'd echo what Mark has said. I mean, the BBC is an extraordinary institution. I think that debates on Newsnight, and I'm privileged to be on them. I mean, they are conducted by the Kirsty Walker or Jeremy Paxman in a way that you may say there's more heat than light, but I think most of us watch it because it is engaging and illuminating. Same thing with the Today programme, the great radio sequence programmes. Same with Channel 4 News. I mean, it's a rich diet, and it's not reproduced in many other countries actually. And it's reflected, I think, in the fact that there is a very serious public in Britain that come to events like this. I mean, look at you. I've been writing now for my books for some 15 years, and I've watched literary festivals of this type become more and more every year, and the attendance this year, the Sunday Times Oxford Literary Festival, is reaching new and higher levels, and a hunger for the serious and a hunger for engagement. So side by side with the trash is something else going on, and I think that you've got to there's a truth in that, and there's a vitality in that, which I think we need to own up to. On your point about financial crises, really well made point. I mean, my God, the Latin American crisis, the lost decade, the Asian financial crisis in 98, 99. In many respects, today's crisis is a result of the Asian financial crisis. It was so unfair what happened in 98, 99, and we hardly reported it, and we said it was crony capitalism. But most Asian countries were subjects of wave upon wave of crippling speculation against their currencies, and countries like South Korea had declines of GDP that were 12 to 15%. Indonesia's GDP declined an amazing 20%. I mean, unbelievable. Thailand was laid waste, and they all said, never again. We are going to build up foreign exchange reserves so that we aren't vulnerable to speculative attack like that. And of course, those foreign exchange reserves and the liquidity they built up, which ran into some trillions of dollars, was the great pool of liquidity in which the American banks fished to lend out those subprime mortgages, with results we all know. So one crisis led to another, and finally it came back to the kind of the richer country core, or the heartland, and our neglect of and what went on in the emerging economies, the periphery, has really come back to bite us big time. And saying it's crony capitalism and belt tighten and take austerity measures, which we don't want to take ourselves. I mean, I think the hypocrisy in that has been well remarked upon in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and correctly. And I think the Washington Consensus, which lay behind all that, has, as Gordon Brown said and others, been shattered. That's a good thing. What succeeds it is the open question. Danny Roderick I know well, and I on his call for a Tobin tax, it's slightly out of character for Danny. He's a lot of work on the institutions of capitalism, and I think that it's the institutions of capitalism, along with the Tobin tax, that actually one's going to get some stability. I think that a Tobin tax by itself would be, if we could get common agreement. And by the way, when the G20 comes together on regulating hedge funds or registering credit rating agencies, all the things that they have done, the door is open to an idea like the Tobin tax in a way it was not open, even 6 months ago, and that's a good thing. But actually, you've got to do the lot. You've got to do, no use in having the Tobin tax, but then having no transparency amongst hedge funds, for example. So I am for a Tobin tax, and I actually think that something of that type is now become, not something fanciful and utopian that the marginal press war or the idealistic press war is, I think it's moving to centre stage. And I can't remember what your other point was, actually.
Allowing for accountability for those who are...
Oh, that was the best. That was really that was really fantastic, and we all of it. And what are we going to say about that, guys? I mean, you were absolutely on the nail with that one. I mean, I find we don't, and it picks up the point about a constitutional settlement. I mean, I actually think the constitution of our political parties is actually problematic, let alone the national constitution. I mean, neither the Labour Party nor the Tory Party have an effective way of actually holding the leadership to account. There's no way that actually the Labour Party in 2007, when Tony Blair, was effectively bullied out of office. I mean, let's be brutal about it. There wasn't a proper machinery for either to prevent that from happening, or once it happened, to actually oblige the party to elect its leader in a contested election. And we gifted the Prime Ministership to Gordon Brown. That shouldn't happen in a democracy like ours. It really shouldn't happen in a democracy like ours. So I can completely take your point. And what is true, of course, of our parties is also true of our companies. And actually, the two feed off each other. A world of poor accountability, poor democratic procedure, poor justification processes in the public realm, then informs what happens in the private realm, and what happens in the private realm feeds back into the public, and the two feed off each other. And you're absolutely right to put your finger on it, and I'm afraid my answer is not better to be able to give you, some kind of rallying thing about what we could do about it, except to agree with you. Thank you.